Tell a friend, tell a friend. Tam behind the mic is on. Live. Come on. Okay. Done. That's right. To the chat. Let's go. I'm going to let a few people come in. Stand by the mic, behind the mic. The mic is behind me and it's in front of me too. How you doing out here in YouTube land? YouTube troopers. We're mourning another one of our legends. Musical legends. So, as I let a few people come in. Hi everybody, how you doing? As you see, the topic is D'Angelo. I would like to take a moment of silence for D'Angelo and his loved ones, his family. Okay. First of all, I think everybody is shocked and they're surprised. My daughters called me yesterday. No, I called them. And they was like, oh, Ma, not again. See, because when someone transitions, in my experience, I lost a daughter, lost a godson, lost a childhood best friend. My grandchildren that I'm raising now, they lost their mom. And they lost their dad 2 years ago. And they're young. They're 12 and now 15. Dream is going to be 16 in December. And nobody is ever ready for a parent to transition. And let me go back myself. I lost both of my parents back to back. Very similar to what has happened and what has occurred with Swayvo Twain, D'Angelo the second. Well, Michael Astor the second. And it was so difficult because I turned around and I didn't have any parents, even though I was grown and I wasn't as close as some may be. But still, I think still in all, when a parent is still alive, you know they're out there. You know what I mean? You know that you're going to speak to them at some point. But when they transition, the things that you was inspired to do, all of that cease. So I know that it's a very, very trying time. And usually with the grief process, when it happens, and I know when it happened to me, I was in shock. And I was just in survival mode and having to plan and preparation. I'm saying this when I lost my parents in 1999. And my parents had been separated for decades. But however, when my dad found out that my mother was no longer here, next thing you know, I think it was like she died June 3rd and he died August. Well, he was in an accident, and he was struck by a motorist on his way to work. August 16th. So you figure that's about 14 months. And I just could not imagine. I had started a new job with the city. And I get a call from Florida State Police. And it was so unexpected. And even when it's one unexpected, or in D'Angelo's case, his children knew. And another thing I want to clear up, all of these conspiracy theories, can we just try to give the family a break? I often think of myself as an MC. Well, I am an MC. I don't do it on a regular anymore, but regard as a big public figure and everybody's involved in it. I think I'm counting my blessings that I'm more low key, and my history is going to be told, and some other projects are coming down the line, because everybody has a theory. Some people, like me, I feel as though, even with my daughter and the kid's father, they weren't together. But ironically, because he had issues and my daughter just could not be so bothered. But ironically, they don't have any parents. My daughter passed away in 2017 on Thanksgiving and my birthday in front of the children. And that was just perplexing for me. And the children's father passed away in 2023. And I'm so glad that I fought for guardianship, because that was a whole big thing. And I be saying that either he wanted to go with Alexia because he had gotten married and divorced, or, because he passed away in his sleep. They said supposedly he had a seizure. And these are young folks. Like, my daughter passed at 30. And the children's father, Tony, passed away in 2023. And he was 34 years old. And he had a seizure in his sleep. So my thing is, like, when we found out, I was like, the correlation is that when my dad found out my mother passed away, he was not really involved with anybody else after my mom. He had gotten remarried, but that didn't work out. But once he found out, I think he found out about my mom passing in June, and my dad was gone in that August. Then, like I said, my grandkids, my daughter passed away in 2017. And then Tony, the children's father, passed away in 2023. And he was 34 years old. So what's going on is that, sometimes kindred spirits, and also you have marriage couples that have been together for decades, like 50, 60 years. And sometimes one will follow the other mate. And, that's just the way it is. But I would like to express about the conspiracy theories, and, the children, the heirs, because when somebody transitions, it's a lot for the family to contend with. And one of the biggest things I was saying in my topic about D'Angelo and Angie, I really believe they were soulmates. And the music industry really messed them up because of image and branding and marketing. It's just that, artists, and I think it's been like that from the beginning, they're just like simple commodities. It's branding, marketing, and selling. And for me, at times, it reminds me of what our ancestors and maybe our um, grandparents, it depends on what your lineage line is. My family lineage line is from the South. It is as though that it's a form of sharecropping or like slavery, because once you know good to them, if an artist is, becomes overwhelmed from working hard, and then they go into the parties, and then they have to promote things, and then the long hours in the studios and the whole gamut that goes along with stardom, some people are not ready for it. They're not prepared. And I often think that for myself, may have missed, a lot of boats that were sailing to cross over commercially, because I started emceeing very early, preteen. And I won't make this all about me. But I think that a lot of times others rejections, and sometimes things happen for a reason, you know, because I when I started rapping and we were young kids, we were rebels, so it was like it wasn't as competitive and combative. It was talking about what was going on, and it really was about uplifting your self-esteem. That's the era I come from, like in the 70s. And it wasn't all of this cursing, and it wasn't all of this demeaning and over sexualizing. But I must say, some of the older guys, they always talked about, somebody getting off of their Bozak and all of that stuff. But again, the whole industry, because even with me getting on and being around different DJs and stuff like that, a lot of them didn't have good intentions, especially for the females. So it's kind of tough. But also, the guys go through it too. So, in my honest opinion, I don't think that Angie groomed D'Angelo, because they still on that shit now. Both of them are gone. They got a child in common, Michael the second, and now their loved ones. Diamond is already, going through the process of dealing with their mother's estate, both of them. And now Michael Archer the second has to deal with both parents' estates. And I'm hoping and praying that D'Angelo set up a will or had a lot of things in trust to make the process much easier. I don't know if he had, I know that he had homes, apartment, well, a house, a building, I should say, in Harlem here in New York City. And he also had property in Virginia as well as California. But however, being in the fact that he transitioned in New York, I don't know whether or not his property here, his building, was his main residence. And with that being said, then it depends on where he was actually residing and where he passed that, um, that would have the standing for his will if he had one, or he would be considered, if he doesn't, intestate. And whereas then he has three children, they would have to uh, distribute all in 1/3. But it's just not that simple, because even with my daughter, and even with my parent, well, my father had everything straightened out for me and my sister. Even though I didn't probably get some of the things I should have, but it was kind of, crazy, because when somebody passes, it's like you could be getting along, and then next thing you know, when it's money and it's different things and other entities and girlfriends or whatever, the sharks come out. Then with him, you have his catalog. You have so many details, and Whew, it's a lot to contend with. So I'm hoping and praying that he did set things up more or less that it would be an easy for his heirs, for his children. Um because it took me a long time, to even go and obtain guardianship for my grandchildren. Well, I had that process expedited because children's services and all the city agencies that was in my daughter's house dropped the ball, and then they blocked me from holding anybody accountable because they were doing a lot of underhanded stuff because it was under de Blasio's administration. That's why I'm not feeling that Mendani character. Not at all. Anybody affiliated with them, nah, we can't do. And I'm hoping and praying that one day that they will find out that some underhanded stuff did happen with my notice of claim. So therefore, we would have to proceed with the negligence, and that was a technicality in New York City rules and the state and the laws. But yeah, um it's a lot because it's a lot emotionally. And Michael, he just lost both parents, because even with my grandchildren, when they found out that their father passed, he wasn't involved, but they were devastated because they always knew that there was another parent out there. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're a youngster, um or you're an adult. With me and my mom had basically an estranged relationship, but still the permanent absence that, oh, she's not going to call me because she had already relocated down to North Carolina. And that was a thing too, and I'm still healing from a lot of the stuff that went on with my mom, because she had some issues, and I'm still doing some ancestral healing and dealing with those particular issues. But yeah, I hear even people saying that D'Angelo didn't come to the funeral. Well, maybe he was too emotional to come to the funeral. Or maybe he did come to the funeral. He may have came before everybody else was there. But I know one thing for certain and two things for sure. He was there at the repast. And somebody had commented on my Facebook page, oh, he didn't come to her funeral and la 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 and all of this. Sometimes, when somebody transitioned, and they were very close, because people be trying to dog my girl out. No, 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 no. He was of legal age. He pursued her. And me being a fellow Sag, and most of the time, that's what happens with us. I've dated guys not that young, but younger than me, and I didn't pursue them. And if I'm working with them, my thing is that I just don't, you know, I don't cross that barrier. But sometimes, things happen in chemistries, so you can't knock anybody for that because he was of age. And when she was helping him musically, he put out a lot of his great material, and he was helping her too. But you know how people are in the music industry. Again, the image, the branding, and the marketing. And that's so sad. That's so sad. And it's horrible that, you have all of these artists that work very hard, and then the record companies and the people that are around them, they don't have their best interests. Well, let me tell you, that happened to me early on. I had my song stolen, and then somebody else wind up recording it. Party Time. You can look that up and see what Pioneer recorded Party Time, and it's been sampled like 20 times. And this was with the Russell Simmons. But I always say, I go up and down as far as that roller coaster ride. because everybody's running around trying to be first and saying that this one did this first and this one did that. And that's not true because everybody couldn't be at one place at one time. And it wasn't just one particular borough that started hip hop, you know. But that's a topic for another time. Um, yeah, it's a lot of shystiness that goes on in the business, and you're not really ready for it, you know. And then a lot of things be happening so fast, and it seemed like the ones that came after you, they're the ones that got the deals, you know. And hopefully, you know, people weren't taking advantage of D'Angelo when he went through his things of substance abuse, because it's something about the music industry that, you know, I guess it's normal that, you know, this is what people do. And but somewhere, somehow they cross the invisible line, and then they blackball you and say that you're difficult to work with when you become diva, or, you know, egocentric in some kind of way. Um, so, but I'm hoping and praying that D'Angelo has put his stuff in the right perspective. And I'm so glad to hear that. I know it was probably, you know, very difficult for them children to watch their father go through excruciating pain and to be in hospice care. But I'm sure Michael was damn glad that he was there, because again, people are saying that D'Angelo didn't show up for Angie Stone's funeral. But one thing I know, and I've seen pictures and some discussions, that he was there for the repast. And he was there with other family members on his side, and they were wearing the Angie Stone t-shirts, the blue ones that they had. But everybody's not putting that out, because why should they? You know, that he was a private person. He had a right to privacy, and he may have been undergoing some symptoms then, you know, and that was a lot, because again, they had a bond. They created music outside before they even created little Michael. You know, now Michael is big, you know, so we really need to do better in our communities, and especially in the Black communities, as screening for the cancers, you know, because he had pancreatic cancer. And a lot of toxins that we're putting in our body as well. Yeah, so I just wanted to jump in, and I wanted to tap into some of those things. I didn't want to get all into the gossip thing and trying to break stuff down, like when did he when did he have an operation and all of that. It may have been wherever the tumors was, it may have spread it, or it may have been difficult to even operate to get to. So they may have had to undergo chemo and radiation. But the bottom line is that he's not here anymore. And he was one of our musical geniuses. And we're losing our people, whether or not they're musical geniuses or they're artists or everyday people or loved ones and family members. Like my daughter. My daughter had heart disease. She suffered with heart disease, and she wasn't taking care of herself. She had two children with that had medical issues. Each one was different. It makes it very complex. So, you know, from all of the different loved ones and different artists that we're losing, we have to do better at providing health care and early detection and screening and knowing what the symptoms are and the whole gamut, you know. And I also think about the record company. I don't know if he was still signed with someone, RCA, maybe. I don't know if they're still in business or there's other subsidiaries, and whether or not they had an insurance plan out on him. Yeah, so the heirs, Imani, uh, Michael, and I think his son, the youngest son, is his name Morroco. I'm not for sure, but I think that's what it is. And I think that he's a minor, so his mom is going to have to be involved on behalf of him. And they're going to have to, she'll probably have to get guardianship in the surrogate's court or superior court, whichever state has jurisdiction. And they're going to have to set up probably a trust or special needs trust or whatever for D'Angelo's youngest son. And then I'm thinking whether or not he'll have a private ceremony, or maybe they'll do a public, maybe memorial, as they should. And I keep saying this, and I ain't gonna stop saying it. But Angie Stone and the Sequence, they deserve Grammys. They really do, cause she was just a musical industry genius, and the industry is not showing Sequence any love. Blondie too. They were writing and doing a lot of things, and that's why I'm just so disgusted with this damn hip hop museum that's going up in the Bronx, because it just is not equal at all. They're pushing their own narratives. They got their own cliques, and it don't matter. Like, I have flyers, but again, I'm a rebel. I'm not have to show all of my stuff. I even have songs and rhymes and stuff, books and books and graffiti tags and all sorts of stuff that I found. But I have an option. My stuff would only go on curation on loan, but not in the museum in the Bronx, because when Angie and Sequence and I were all together in 2016, they were trying to push this narrative that it was three girls that started and that there was a mother. Nobody mothered me. I started because the guys in my neighborhood in South Jamaica, Queens, and St. Albans, Future Sounds, and Hollis, I was the only freaking female. And a lot of places, it was just a few of us. And then you had a whole female group. Well, it was mixed. In East New York, Brooklyn, the Frisco girls came before the Play girls and all of them. And they really don't want to get into the real history, because hip hop just didn't start because of the commercial success. It started from the parks, and it may have started like the Bronx started in the center. We didn't have centers like that in Queens. We had parks, we had avenues, we had block parties, we had house parties, we had clubs. The Fantasia, the Fog House, Jamaica Roller Dome, Jamaica Armory, the Encore. And I didn't even realize at the time that did perform twice at the Encore. And I found documentation for that and pictures and what have you. But they don't want to acknowledge the Sequence. And then I was hearing, because I remember the Mercedes ladies, and I've seen them, when I was out and about younger. And they didn't think it was right that Sylvia Robinson signed Sequence, and they were from the South. And that's one of the reasons why when I went down and I emceed and rapped in North Carolina in 1977 at Billy Wood's place, they would call people up north city slickers, And now I understand why, because they always trying to pull some stuff. But nobody can touch the taste that Angie did, and what her craft and her geniuses and music directing and all of that, and freedom. And she did her thing. She wrote, she produced, And the only thing that I'm sad about is that I didn't get an opportunity to work with her firsthand. You know, I wish I really would have been able to work with her. But for that weekend in 2016, we had ourselves a ball, and it's just, unfortunate that we're in a culture of nepotism, cronyism, and this is going straight across the board. And if you go against the grain, it's like they want to take out their whip and give you lashes just again like we in the Atlantic slave trade all over again. But it's just transitioned into something totally different, which is quite perplexing. So I know I kind of went off, I kind of deviated a little bit. So I'm just waiting. And what you think, you could put in the chat what you think about D'Angelo and now Angie's legacy, what it's going to look like. Do you think that the heirs are probably get together? Hopefully, because I, heard that Imani is a musical genius too. She inherited some stuff from her dad. And Swayvo, he does his thing. He's a beast on the mic. I'm hoping and praying that they will be able to get together and that they won't allow properties and intellectual properties and all of that stuff to get in the way, and that they'll have a smooth transition. And all we could do now is like pray for them, because it is not easy when you lose both parents. Now, I was an adult in my late 20s, maybe early 30s when it happened to me. And my grandchildren are minors and it happened to them. It's not an easy shoes to walk through, grief. And like I said, when you're dealing with estate and properties and stuff, and my daughter had some stuff in her estate, and she had things that had to be resolved, it's a lot. But I do tell you, for all of the ones that second guessed and felt that, Angie took advantage of D'Angelo, no, she didn't. No, she didn't. They were consenting adults, even if she was older. Nobody was saying anything when a lot of these guys was taking advantage of all of the minor girls and doing other things that they shouldn't have been doing. It's something else. These guys is a trip. These men and the industry, you know. But one thing for certain and two things for sure, he was heartbroken. Because he knew that Angie was out there somewhere. You know what I mean? And it's just so unfortunate. But again, in my opinion, they were kindred spirits. And now the industry, just like she said, is the one that divided and dissolved that union. And at the same time, he was young, so he didn't have a chance to explore whatever, however, sow his oats, as they say. But you have, look, Tina Turner was younger than her husband, I think by maybe 20 or 30 years, maybe. And he stuck and stayed with her. And I think he had given her part of his kidney or his liver, one of those, his internal organ. Yeah, he loved her. So, in certain aspects, when it's of age of consent, it shouldn't matter. He wasn't 17. He wasn't 18. They probably was working together at 19 and probably got involved when he was 20, 21. But, people want to just omit that and leave that out. So, I'm hoping and praying that the industry will definitely do right by them both. By D'Angelo in giving him a tribute, and he needs to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I believe Sequence does too. And if not Sequence, the whole group, Angie needs to be inducted and she needs to have a Grammy. And if I have my way, I'm going to set up things whereas I'll be able to I'll be able to be a member of the Grammys and to become a voter candidate to vote. Mm-hmm. Because they don't want me to start telling about the history. Because, like I said, I know some things happened in the Bronx, but all of it didn't because I've already done my investigation and I have some interviews and I'm working on some other things and I'm in trial with one of these damn bozos that, really, if I knew some of the things I knew when I was young, I would have ran the other damn way. And he's been harassing me. Now he's turning around, running around, filing a complaint because I got tired of his stuff and I gave it right back to him. But, that's typical narcissistic behavior. Yeah, so I'm going to jump off for a little while because I got to get my charger. And I want to see what my cards say. I haven't done a reading in such a long time. And I have brand new cards and I'm still working and building up on my channel. And, it's almost 8 years since I lost my daughter. And it's almost, 8 years and 7.5 years since I lost my godson because he was murked 6 weeks after I lost my daughter. And I am just now, I'll never be the same. And I'm sure that Angie and D'Angelo's heirs won't be the same either. Especially Michael. It's going to take a minute. Some people will dive into work or music or whatever, but still at some point, you're going to have to sit still because suppressing that type of grief and that type of loss, I was so sick. 2019, I was hospitalized. I caught this infection called Lunge's disease where I had inflammation throughout my body and it was closing up my throat. True story. And I've had like so many different medical roller coasters because grief is some hard shoes and ugly shoes and raggedy shoes to be walking in. And then when it's so high profile and there's so many different twists and turns and stuff and so much business that you have to take on. And now, they got to figure out, where they're going to have the service at. It would be nice if they could join them together. But I don't know. Maybe his parents are still alive. I don't know. But I just hope and pray for some peace. At that, it's Tam behind the mic. Yeah, and I didn't doll up. I didn't beat my face or anything. I said I just needed to jump on here and I'm grieving like everybody else. And yes, I'm grieving just like D'Angelo was a family member because he was. He was the music of my life. And I appreciate him as a musician because with me being an MC rapper from the first generation, and I was doing stuff in the 80s, but I just didn't cross over commercially yet. One never knows, huh? You know, I got to do something for a hobby, and I've been writing again, which has been a fantastic thing for me because, you'll have writer's blocks for a long time. But now I'm beginning to write again, and, I feel good about that. And, I need the form of expression and the music that is soothing to me. And I would like to help others that are grieving as well. So that's why I created this channel for one, and I'll probably will probably split it up at some point as I gain new subscribers. And I would like to share what has helped me and what has helped the grandchildren too, because with this high level of grief, a lot of times we just think, what people do, they immerse themselves into work or music and stuff like that. But a lot of people in the industry, they don't care if you lost somebody yesterday. Basketball player, you better play the game today. And the same thing, you got a concert, you gotta attend. You have a show, you gotta go in the studio. They don't care nothing. But however, it's such an emotional turmoil that you have to have and surround and implement in having support systems. And what I mean by that is be around people that have are walking in your shoes. Everybody doesn't walk and they do not process and they don't handle grief like that. But there's so many different tools that can help you. So when I got my grandchildren, I put them in trauma therapy as well as a grief support group, bereavement through Calvary. And I also enrolled myself in both too because it was just a lot. It was a lot. And I was already sick and injured, aggravated injuries when this happened to my daughter. So I wasn't at her apartment to even call an ambulance. So it's like feeling that guilt too. Um, and taking out that time for self-care. And I did inform Diamond, to make sure that they're taking care of themselves, and especially Mike. You know what I mean? Because that's hard, you know. But the blessing is that he was there, you know. He was there. And I'm hoping and praying that he was able to gain some kind of relationship with his sibling, because Michael is older, and I must say Angie did a great job in raising those children, those young, well, the young man, and Diamond is a whole woman between her and her parents. They did a great job, and I'm just hoping and praying that, a lot of these bloggers and content creators will just stop dissecting and, because it makes it even worse. And we just got to keep all his children and in our thoughts and our prayers. And we'll see and stay tuned to what will be, whether or not he'll have a public memorial, which I probably doubt, or there'll be some kind of tribute to him. And hopefully they'll do a tribute for both of them, because even in the news, they keep bringing up. And D'Angelo Michael Archer had a child by singer and soultress Angie Stone. They just keep drilling that in. And we all know that. But shoot, I ain't mad at Angie, shucks. D'Angelo was fine as hell. Shucks. And we Sagittarius. Me and that Angie is Sagittarius. And I just reminisce on when we were hanging out in 2016, and it was like we just knew each other for decades, even though I had met her many decades ago. But that was nice. And like two peas in a pod. So, all right. Y'all have a nice evening. And I'll check in with you all tomorrow. Again, be easy and let's uplift one another, even though it's so difficult. Because it's so many phonies in the music industry, and outside too. And people that say we all we got, that's some hogwash. It should be, but we don't have that kind of unity. But, however, let's try to be considerate and understanding and give out some good positive energy. Okay. I need to log off. Okay.